time to play ball. Welcome to the podcast with no limits. Whether it be sports, current events, or random thoughts, this is the place to step in and stay a while. Your host is a proud alumnus of Rio Hondo Prep, a former minor league baseball umpire, and a man with strong opinions. Welcome to the Get Home Safe podcast and your host, Matt Hersema.
Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Get Home Safe. Happy summer to everyone. It's finally here. The weekend is here, but also summer, man. It always feels a little different, obviously warmer, but you feel like maybe less responsibilities. I don't know, maybe more responsibilities for some of us. Summer, the kids are out of school and running around doing other things, but I'm sure there's still plenty to do. And it's just maybe for some of us, just a few months where it's a little hotter, but it is like barbecue season, right? Some poolside stuff. Summer is here, so that's awesome. And today on the podcast, a Friday edition, of course, we're having a conversation with somebody that I've crossed paths with many years ago, and so many different people on this podcast. I can say are kind of from all over. Yeah, a lot of Rio Hondo Prep and Care Youth League people, but I've had a lot of people that I've, again, come in contact with or worked with in many different areas of my life. And today is one of those people, somebody that we didn't work together a ton, but it was the time was brief, but it was a good time. And definitely we stayed in touch since then. So today we're going to be joined by Mr. Trent Tcheng. Trent is currently a volleyball coach for Flintridge Sacred Heart. He also is the director of recruiting for the San Gabriel Elite Volleyball Club. We'll let him tell you all about that. He also does some softball coaching at Flintridge Sacred Heart, but it was at Cal State Fullerton where he and I crossed paths. He was working for the Fullerton Flyers. Sorry, they were the Orange County Flyers when I joined there my senior year as an intern. Then it was the next few years at Cal State Fullerton on the baseball team. Both of us were working for the team in some capacity. Trent was more hands-on on the field, in the locker room and stuff of that nature, working for the athletic department and equipment staff. I was up in the press box, usually just pushing a button, answering a phone call, doing stuff like that. But it was cool to see a guy that we worked together with the Flyers, then with the Cal State Fullerton baseball team, and then Trent went on to bigger and better things. He was also a Kansas City Royals player personnel video intern. He did that for a season in AAA out in Omaha. So I will let him again fill you in on more of that. He's done some high performance filmer for Human Performance Consulting. So he does a lot of work with sports. And again, these are people I like to talk to, people from different fields in the great sports that we love. So I haven't talked to Trent in many, many years, and I'm very much looking forward to catching up, hear about everything that he's been doing, and just maybe some of the stories and memories from along the way. So looking forward to catching up with my fellow Cal State Fullerton alumni, Trent Tcheng. So it's been a while since we talked. So let's get right to it and let's bring him on the Get Home Safe podcast. Okay, I'm now joined by Trent Tcheng. He and I haven't seen each other in quite some time, but our paths crossed a few different times at Cal State Fullerton, working for the Orange County Flyers in the Golden League and the Cal State Fullerton Baseball, of course. Trent Tcheng, what's up, man? Welcome to the Get Home Safe podcast.
What's up? Thanks for having me on.
Trent, it's been a while, man. When you start working for different sports teams or college or professional independent leagues or whatever, you meet all kinds of people who kind of have the crazy thoughts that you have. Oh, I'm going to work in sports. That'll be a lot of fun. Was that kind of how you got involved into all the different activities you did at Fullerton?
Honestly, I'm a sports fanatic. I'll watch anything that's competitive, even if it's like who can eat a taco the fastest, right? It's just nature. And I wanted to do anything that had to deal with sports, whether it was operations side, whether it's just being on the field or the court. I wanted to be involved. I had the itch and I was willing to do anything that I needed to do to be a part of it.
Wow. Well, you've done a lot of different things, which we will eventually get to. You're currently a volleyball coach at Flintridge Sacred Heart, not Flintridge Prep for our Rio Hondo listeners, those that rivalry we have with them, but Flintridge Sacred Heart there in La Cañada, I believe. You coach softball, and you're the director of recruiting for the San Gabriel Elite Volleyball Club. What can you tell me about the San Gabriel Elite Volleyball Club?
All right, so San Gabriel Elite, or SG Elite, which are kind of known nationally, is the largest club in Southern California under one roof, we say, because there are a couple other clubs that are in Southern California that have multiple satellite, but each of their satellites operate independently of each other. So this year we're lucky enough to have around 64 teams in our one facility, operating pretty much year round. And so, yeah, it's a year round job, and don't get fooled by the title. Recruiting is just a small portion of what we do here. I do a lot of like operational stuff, logistics, scheduling, janitorial stuff, Uber driver, whatever they need, it's pretty much all hands on deck, and you can make up your own title, whatever you want it to be. It's your title.
For sure. No, did you say 16 or 64? How many teams?
64.
64, like the NCAA tournament, or what it used to be.
Yes, exactly.
The SG Elite is 64 club teams?
Yes.
Oh,
all at one site. Yep.
and where is that site?
So we are actually located in the LaSalle Park area. So like just south of Glendale. Our address says Los Angeles, but everyone just says we're in Glendale, which is about 2.5 miles from Dodger Stadium. Yeah.
That's crazy, man. 60. So I know like travel, club baseball, a little bit about the basketball side of things, AAU. I don't know really much about volleyball, but is it similar where it's just, it's tryouts, you got to, get on these teams and you're pretty much playing year round? Tell me about the SG Elite.
Okay. So the way volleyball is kind of broken up, because girls and boys are a little different, just because for CIF, or like high school rules, you can't be in a club sport during the high school season, right? So I would say our actual season starts like the last week of July with tryouts. So Southern California allows tryouts to happen for high school age girls the last week of July. And when I started, it used to be in November after the high school season. But the idea was, if they have tryouts in July, it gives clubs more time to like order uniforms and, do all the logistics stuff, rather than they're just cramming everything from November straight into the season, which starts in December. So tryouts are in the last week of July, and it goes, then we go dead for high school season. And we start coming back with our 14 and under. So our middle school, our elementary school age groups, which will have tryouts in the first week of October. That age group will be the first ones to start the season. And that normally starts the first week of November. And then high school will start Thanksgiving weekend, or the very first Monday after Thanksgiving. And then you go until nationals, it ends on the 4th of July this year.
Wow. So that's a lot of volleyball. So it's right after your high school season ends, whenever that is, playoffs wise. And then you jump right into, now we're playing the bulk of your year.
Exactly.
I should say.
Exactly. Wow. I would say like volleyball is the equivalent to travel baseball, or like college, like in terms of you're going year round, 12 months. You go straight from club into high school and back into club. And it's just, an endless cycle.
Because you just said you go from November through July 4th, and then right after that is tryouts for the next. So is there is then that break from July until the end of the high school season. But again, their high school season starts in September, so it's not much of a break.
Correct. Exactly. This year, high school actually starts. The first official game you can have is August 13th.
Okay. Wow. So it's very similar to football,
Yeah,
basically, right?
exactly. Yep.
Tied into
Yep.
it, the fall sports there. So again, I don't know much about volleyball. I've seen, like basic rules and things, but what interests me about this is that we've seen this in so many other sports now, and high schools have had to kind of make that separation of club season and in season. But you see it in basketball, you see it in baseball on the boys side of things. I knew that it was there, softball and basketball as well. But when would you say club, full-time travel, whatever you want to call it, the club volleyball scene, when do you think that really took effect years ago?
So I don't think I was a part of volleyball when that actually started. Its progression into travel baseball, travel, basketball. But from what I'm hearing, from my colleagues and from my college coaches, probably it started like 2009, 2010 is when like it was a really regional based sport and you really stayed within your region. But then all of a sudden, like around that 2009, 2010 year, it started going nationally. And, I think volleyball is the fastest growing sport in general between boys and girls on both sides. And it's pretty much adopted, the schedule that travel baseball is, AAU basketball and stuff like that. Yeah, just crazy.
Well, I would say the benefits to it, much like basketball, it's indoors. There's not a huge equipment cost. There might be other fees, of course, but as far as there's some knee pads and some tennis shoes, and you're good to go for the most part. And so, but what about this, Trent? What have you seen? Have you seen more girls now not playing other sports like they did maybe in the past because you're now invested completely into one sport year round?
So you're talking about like sports specific stuff like
Yeah,
that?
like the
Okay.
volleyball, basketball, and softball, or maybe two of those sports. Are most of these girls not playing other sports because they're so focused on one?
I would say probably around 70% of the girls playing club volleyball are sports specific to just volleyball. You do have, 25% to 30% that will play multiple sports, whether it's, like Rio Honda Prep makes you play every single sport, right? So like whether their school is making them do it just because their student enrollment requires that to happen, or, hey, I want to train and the cheapest way for me to, get out there and get extra training physically, strength conditioning is just to play another sport, right? At my school. So you see a lot of like transition from volleyball to track and field, volleyball, maybe into basketball in the off seasons at their actual high schools. But ultimately, volleyball is trending to be a very sports specific, which I don't know if that's the good thing. But but yeah.
Well, I mean, if some people want to get to the next level, it seems like this is kind of some steps that you got to do. But one thing I've seen a lot in baseball, Trent, is that guys will go and play club ball or whatever, travel ball, and they'll play year round. And they hit a point, man, even if they do have a break, they hit a point where they're just burnt out. And maybe by the end of their high school years, they're just like, I don't want to do this anymore. What would you say is the majority of the girls you see? Is there some burnout, or are they just doing this to stay hungry and get to the next level?
100% you see burnout. There's no question there's burnout. Even if the players themselves say they're not burnt out, they're burnt out, right? And I have the unique opportunity to coach most of these girls most of my girls in high school play club, and then I still see majority of them on the club side, right? But I have to be really aware of where my girls are at, mentally coming into the high school season, and understand that, hey, my kids that are playing year-round club, I might not even have them do any volleyball stuff for the first month and a half, or right until the season starts, and we'll go, straight into the season, not doing as much training as we should be doing. But that's more, I got to keep them, engaged mentally. I don't want them checking out. But I think just high school is still special, right? You get that school environment that you get that you see at like high school, you see at football, right? Everyone comes to support, especially coaching at an all-girls school. Volleyball is pretty much our football, right? And you'll have everyone for big games coming to the volleyball games, and you can't replicate that environment on the club side, right? I always tell all our players, hey, high school, you play for the school. Club, you play for yourself. And, you know, you can really see that because club is very, I hate to use it, it's okay to be selfish in club, right? Because you are paying for that training, you are paying to be on that team. So there's a level of expectation that you would have from club that you shouldn't have into high school. And now you're kind of seeing that crossover, that same mentality coming from club into the high school sports, which, you know, you kind of have to be very careful on how, you know, you're communicating, but I think you can solve a lot of that with just being clear in your communication with both players and parents.
Sure. So from November through July, I mean, that is 9 months.
Yeah.
This is after the high school season has ended. Take the typical, I don't know, 16, 17-year-old young lady, a varsity player. What is the schedule like? How often are they practicing with the SG Elite, and how many times are they playing games?
Okay, so the rule of thumb for most club, I think it holds true to like a travel baseball, travel softball. I'm not so sure about soccer and basketball, but our elite club teams will go 2 to 3 times a week. So like our normal schedule for our top teams per age group will go Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Those are their practice times. And then of course we play on the weekends. If they're not playing on if they're playing on the weekends, you know, you lose at third practice, but that's just expected. Tournament wise, you'll play regionally. And so our Southern California region will probably go 1 tournament per month. So December is just 1 tournament. January, you might have 2, 1 in the front end of January, 1 on the back end of January. And then February, definitely 1 before Valentine's Day. And then currently where the recruiting calendar allows D1s off their campus is President's Weekend. And so that's usually go time. So from there, it's like you're kind of easing into the season at the beginning, but once President's Weekend's happening, you're traveling. And so President's Weekend's the first time you can go out, or you can go out at any point in time, but it's the first time colleges are allowed off their campus. And so the big tournaments happen on President's Weekend. And so we split our club up. So our top teams will go to Triple Crown, which is in Kansas City. And our like 2s, 3s, and 4s teams will go to the Las Vegas Classic, which is held by our region. And you'll have 200 to 300 teams per age group at each of these tournaments. And so it's just crazy, all right? You hear whistles, you know, girls screaming, you see coaches and refs wearing earplugs and noise canceling headphones. But so from February through the end of qualification, so like there's a lot of bid tournaments where you have to go and get a bid to go to nationals. Happen all the way through the end of April. And then kind of like right now, May is a little like lull because D1 coaches are back on the quiet period, so they can't leave their campus. So recruiting tournaments, it's not high of a, you know, pressure to go out to extra tournaments during May. So it's kind of like a reprieve, allowing a lot of the girls to do AP exams, graduation, you know, proms always take, you know, effect in May. So it's kind of like, hey, May is a breather for everyone to kind of re-energize for the last, you know, home stretch, which is June. But yeah, that's pretty much the schedule.
Wow. I chose the wrong sport to officiate, man. I should have done volleyball. Volleyball year round, you're indoors. You know, I'm not getting hit by baseballs. I mean, I should have considered do it and go in this route, man. That's very, very busy for all the young kids there. And what would you say percentage wise, how many of these girls, maybe not even D1, but just do end up continuing their volleyball career at the college level?
I think I've heard it's 4%. So 4% of the girls that play high school volleyball, so not just club, but high school volleyball in general, will end up going and playing at the next level. And I think I haven't seen the numbers for this past fall, so the 2021 fall, just because we're still in the academic school year. But the last like full one was the fall of 2019 before COVID hit, where like some states were playing, some states weren't. There was 452,000 girls playing high school volleyball. And so you're looking at maybe just over 4,500, potentially playing college at the next level.
Yeah. And the thing is, at the high school level, you can see a difference. You can see when teams go in there and it's like, oh yeah, they're on a different level. They play all the time. And no matter how good teams prepare in season, or the preseason, like when someone's playing year round, it's tough to compete. So, wow, I just can't get over how much volleyball there's. So what's it take to make these one of these teams in the SG Elite? You said there's tryouts in July. What do they consist of? Is it a one-day thing? Is it a couple weeks? How do you make the team?
So the way we hold it is we'll carry tryouts from the first day we're allowed to have it, and then have like 7 to 9 days of like makeup tryouts, just because everyone's scheduled, whether they're on vacation or they're at college camps and stuff. So, it's important to be flexible with every single girl. But the idea is majority of the girls, we can identify where we want to place them an hour and a half, 2 hours of a workout. Now, there are some, we do evaluate wrong sometimes. And especially with the gap now between our tryouts and then high school season, girls that we're projecting to be at a certain spot after high school sometimes don't achieve it, or girls that we don't think will somehow have this great high school season and just it clicks, right? And we didn't place them high enough coming out of high school, right? So, we try not to give every single roster spot away on every single team, just so we have some flexibility and go, okay, we really underplaced you, so we're going to move you up. Or, we won't move down. Like if we miss eval on the kid, we offer that spot, they're not going to move down. You can only move up, right? But yeah, so it's a lot of basic skills at tryouts and just seeing, can you serve? How hard is your serve? Can you hit the ball? Can you pass the ball, right? It's very individually based for the tryout, just because a lot of the 6-on-6 drills, like maybe you're not used to the setter that's hitting you, so your timing's off. You can't really truly take a 6-on-6 drill to a full evaluation, especially, maybe the hitter is way better than the setter, or maybe the setter is way better than the hitter. But a lot of individual evaluations first, and then we let them gameplay to see maybe if there's an X factor that we weren't seeing in the individual drills.
Sure. No, that's interesting. What is this Brooklyn Elite I see here on your resume?
All right. So a couple of the coaches at SG Elite moved to Brooklyn. And so I'm doing that club's recruiting as well. And so I'll fly out to New York a couple times of the year to watch their practices, go to tournaments with them. But yeah, it's pretty much the exact same thing that I'm doing here in LA out in Brooklyn.
Look at you, man. Coast to coast. What a guy. No, that's amazing. Exactly. Now I got to ask Trent, like when I met you, no offense, you didn't seem like a volleyball guy to me. I mean, you were very much in love with baseball. And before we get to the baseball, so I mean, how did you wind up in this crazy world of coaching volleyball?
So my brother played volleyball. He was a basketball and volleyball kid in high school. And ultimately, at the end of the day, in order to get my master's, I had to do an internship or a mentorship under someone that had a master's degree, right? And on the baseball side, sadly, there's not a lot of people that carry a master's. Well, you might see more nowadays because of all the analytics that are going on. But when I was doing my master's, Moneyball was just, just something that you heard about, right? It wasn't something that is fully being invested right now. So I knew a couple coaches that my brother played for, had their masters. And so I had to do 450 hours. And that's kind of how I got into volleyball. I saw there was a lot of potential to make money and have a career and actually like help develop something, right? Volleyball, I really feel is about, you know, maybe 5 years to a decade behind in terms of baseball and football and just the product that's being put on the field or on the court. Volleyball's, you know, closing that gap really fast. But there's a lot of creative ideas that you can do and take from football, basketball, baseball, and actually implement it into the volleyball thing. You know, and the biggest thing that I think I kind of created, or you know, maybe I just helped make it bigger, was running college camps, right? So instead of kids going to the actual college for one camp for like $500, they can stay home at our club, and we will pay like 30 to 40 colleges to come out and work with the kids. And so you're getting to work, you know, work and show your skills with 40 to 50 college coaches, and you're only paying $500. So you can get 40 coaches for $500 versus going to the actual camp at the school and paying $500 for just one staff.
Yeah, no, that makes a whole lot more sense. And it's been interesting to me to see, again, the parallels. And that's what again, it's not so much the volleyball talk. It's, to me, the ins and outs of everything, seeing the similarities of baseball and all these tournaments and college coaches showing up. You know, that's how the promoters sell it to the teams, is, hey, you're going to have some coaches come and get a look, and maybe they'll see and like you. So yeah, it sounds real interesting. It sounds like man, you're doing great work, and you found really something you're passionate about. When Trent, did you discover this passion for sports? You mentioned it early on, but was it where you grew up and playing ball? Tell me about where you grew up and how you found a love of sports.
So I was born in Pasadena, and then I live in San Gabriel. But honestly, I think my love for sports came from my dad's side of the family. And my dad took me to Dodger games when I was really young. My uncle, who moved to Texas, you know, back in the 90s with my cousins, they were really big hockey fans. And so whenever I was with my cousins, it was sports were on the TV, some way, shape, or form. And, you know, of course, my dad's from Normal, Illinois. So Chicago Bulls were always, you know, his team. So when, you know, they were having that great run with MJ, the Bulls were on, you know, our TV whenever, you know, we were able to watch it. And since my mom wouldn't allow us to have cable growing up, my dad and I would always go to our, you know, the boat, the sports bar and just watch all the games there. And like the manager who just retired saw me grow up from like 4 or 5 years old until, you know, like I'm 37 now. And so I've known him since I was like 4. And so it was just always going to the boat for games just because we didn't have cable at home. But yeah, you know, my dad's side of the family definitely was, you know, why I'm so sports crazed, I think.
So did you play, you know, baseball like most kids, or any other sports, getting extra passion from kind of watching it on TV and then wanting to go do it also?
Yeah, so I played basketball in like this local Japanese league. I'm half Japanese, half Chinese. So I started that out same time I started like T-ball, right? So I was going from basketball to baseball, and it just stuck with me the entire time. You know, I played baseball through high school, and we actually had a bunch of college players that were in our little league, you know, like Nolan Brunix. He was in the same league as us. And then there was a couple other guys that I don't quite remember, but he says, hey, remember they were on that team and they're now pitching in the major leagues, or they're playing. And I'm like, I don't remember them so much because, you know, from that 8 to 11-year-old window, I only really know the ones that were on my team or who I consistently played against. But yeah, you know, baseball's my love, you know, like no other sport will probably be baseball, but ultimately, you know, I tried to play anything that my schedule would allow me to play.
Yeah. So always a Dodger fan, it sounds like. But
yes.
Now what about this crossover with your dad and the Bulls and then the Lakers coming along? I mean, where was your loyalties there?
So my dad says we are Dodger, Lakers, Kings fans when they're not playing a Chicago team. He will move over to the Bulls, Cubs, and Bears, and the Blackhawks when they come into town. And so I will always support LA teams, but he'll support Chicago when they're in town. And then when they leave, he'll support the LA teams.
I respect that. I mean, where you're from and then where you live now, I get it. I totally get that. That's very fair. Unlike some other people around the country rooting for teams from all over for no reason. But anyway,
exactly.
That's really cool. So playing sports, what about high school? From the Pasadena area, when did you end up going to high school? Did you play sports there?
Yep. I graduated from Gabriel. My class was the only class that got the old school and the new school. So my freshman year, we played football on the field. And then as soon as the fall season was over, they gated the entire field up and started construction. And then everything from, sophomore year on, all the teams had to go offsite to go practice and play. And then senior year, they opened the gym in the partial section of the school. So I got that portion of it, but ultimately I really only played for 2 years. And then I got really big into speech and debate. I was able, I love to travel. And so speech and debate, you don't stay local. You have to go across the country to play and or not play, but argue, speak, whatever you want to call it.
You're playing,
I say compete. You have to go across the country to compete, right?
Yeah.
And so just that portion, is I can argue with people and I can travel, right? And sometimes I win when I'm arguing, that's kind of what
I did that also, Trent. It was called umpiring.
Yeah. But yeah, so I kind of went heavy into it junior and senior year. And then that's actually why I went to Fullerton. I went because I wanted to compete at the college level, and Fullerton's, forensics or debate team, whatever you want to call it, there was openings. And so I went there.
So let me ask, I don't know much about this. So debate, is it, you compete against other schools? Really? And so, and is there a panel of judges who a fight, determining, hey, which school made the better points? And is that pretty much how it works?
So the debate's kind of funny, right? Because you have to know who your judge is, right? Because you get one judge per round in prelims, but then once you go to the elimination rounds, they'll put 3 judges on the panel. So now you're having to convince at least 2 of the 3 to get the win in the debate situation. But normally at local tournaments or regional state tournament, right, you have parents that are judges. So you can't be as technical in your arguments with a parent judge that has no idea what you're talking about, right? They're just there because their team or their daughter or son needs a judge in order to enter the tournament, right? And so now at the beginning, you're allowed to ask the judges a couple questions about their judging philosophy, or what are they looking for. And so you kind of have to tailor your arguments based off of what kind of judge you have, right? So if you have a parent judge, you're pretty much dumbing down all your arguments and having a general conversation with them. You're trying to win the empathy vote with them, right? But if you have a coach or more technical judge, you can go all off. You can do every single argument in the book, and those debates get heated really fast just because there's so many different arguments you can go off on. But it kind of teaches you to be on your, think on your feet, understand who your audience is. And it's kind of like a scouting report, right? You understand who you're going up against, and then you game plan based off of who are they throwing, what is this other team's tendencies. So I still got my sports fix in the debate world.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Competition and a winner, a loser, and someone that making decisions. Yeah, it sounds just like it. So I got to ask, what were what were the topics, or maybe a couple examples? It wasn't always something political, was it? Or was it something of what's a better color, blue or black? I mean, what were some of the topics as someone who knows nothing about this stuff?
What was my high school senior year? That's so long ago, man.
Yeah, who you telling?
I think the national champion, like the tournament, the topic was the United States should be responsible for rebuilding and financing the construction of Iraq.
Oh, wow.
And so
that's pretty deep.
Yeah. So you have to, one, you take politics and you have to figure out what part of the country are you in, right? Where
True.
do they tend to lean? And then you just tailor your argument to that, argument. Whether or not you believe it, it doesn't matter.
Well, that's what
now,
I'm fascinated in. Yeah, that's what I'm fascinated in is the concept of a lot of people you hear out today talking in public circles and everything. They believe what they're saying, or at least they pretend to.
Yeah.
In your element here, you may be for something or against something, but that's not the point. You have to figure out a way to make the best argument, regardless of what the topic is.
Exactly. And, like debate, they use a thing now, they call it spreading. And the easiest way to explain it is if I'm playing a tennis game against you as my opponent, right? I'm going to hit as many tennis balls at you at one time, right? So there's going to be hundreds of tennis balls in play at one time. And you, as my opponent, have to hit every single tennis ball back, right? And so if you don't cover one of the topics, I'm going to focus in, hey, they didn't cover this, but this is the most important issue for these reasons, right? And then as my opponent, you're going to be like, the reason why I didn't cover this topic was because it's not that important, right? For these reasons. And so something that could start off with 100, arguments on different topics gets narrowed down to why is this argument more important than this other argument? And like 99 other arguments don't even have they don't matter in this debate anymore. We're now down to, you didn't cover this one, I think it's important, or I didn't cover that one because I think this argument's more important. And so now you're weighing the impacts. But the one thing is, when you're doing policy debate or team debate, which is what I pretty much did, everything ends in nuclear war, because that is the worst outcome that you can have. And so
I shouldn't laugh,
right? And so they're like, oh, by not answering this, you are going to upset Russia, and Russia, is going to do this against you, and they're going to bring in these other countries that agree with Russia on this. And then like in reality is like, is it really going to happen if the US doesn't fund, the reconstruction of Iraq? I don't think so, but you have to argue, one way or the other, because you have to be able to argue both sides, because you're going to be for it in one round and you'll be against it in another round. So it's like you trade off per round, and they assign you what, side you're going to be on.
So you go from the high school debate team and everything into Cal State Fullerton. And is that what you ended up studying or continuing to pursue?
I did it for 2 years, and then debate in college is really weird, man. It's pretty much who can come up with the most obscure argument. Had nothing to do with, the actual topic. But you did hear some really cool, I guess, speeches or topics. Like the one from Long Beach State, I never really give the 49ers or dirt bags, props, but one of my favorite teams came out of Long Beach State, and these two guys rapped all their speeches. Like, they played music, they played a soundtrack, a beat, and they literally rapped their speeches. And their main argument was rap is the language of the urban community. And in order to understand, in order to solve for the topic, you have to understand what your people want, and understanding rap and, the history behind it.
Wow.
Is going to help you solve your issues at home first. And so their big argument was, we need to solve for within, the United States first before we can go venture out and try to solve for nuclear war
Yeah.
internationally. And so it was a really unique, like just, I never went up against them, but I got to watch a couple of their rounds and
Oh yeah.
it was really entertaining. It's like,
Yeah, rapping. It's like Hamilton. It's like the Hamilton
exactly.
show. It sounds just like it.
Right. And so like, that was probably like the coolest, like, experience in the debate world at college. But realistically, you get those like really obscure arguments, right? That you just have to prepare for everything. You're not really covering the topic that's given. You have to prepare for rap, and the urban voice. And so it's like, oh my gosh, any single argument can be, brought up and you have to address it, because then if you ignore them, then you're just saying their voices aren't important. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay. But yeah, so at the end of the day, I was like, okay, this isn't really what I want to do. And, at that time I started working in the athletic department from a freshman. And then it was just more, okay, I don't need to travel as much in college. I'm kind of over, I phased out of this. And that's where I, pretty much focused back in athletics.
Yeah. So what were your early jobs at Cal State Fullerton as a freshman in the athletic department? It was something I wanted to get into, was working for game operations. I got to assist to basketball games, working at the table for Mel Frank, stuff like that. But what were some of your earlier duties and responsibilities?
So my freshman and sophomore year, I started in the athletic department on game day staff, right? So set up, take down, collect ticketings, basically ushering, right? And I did that for my first 2 years at Fullerton. My junior year, I studied abroad in London and came back, but I was already working with the Fullerton Flyers during the summer. So I kind of did that. And my college roommate was working in the equipment room, right? And so one of the equipment guys, graduated out and there was an opening, and my roommate threw my name in there, and it was awesome, right? And so I just went straight into the equipment room as soon as I moved back, and I went from there, worked on, I think a little bit of everything, like anything I can get my hands into, or someone that needed help, I kind of volunteered for it. And at the end of the day, it's kind of how I got into like USA track and field stuff, because I'm not a kinesiology major, but my roommate is, and Dr. Will Wu, who's now at Long Beach State, Wu, him and his business partners were all biomechanical PhD professors. And so they were hired by USA Track and Field to do all the biomechanical filming. And so I knew how to film from, I can push start and stop on a camcorder, and I know how to upload film into, a computer and stuff like that, just from, working around the baseball team and stuff like that. And so I got to go back to traveling with, I guess they call it HPC, Human Performance Consulting, which is the biomechanical company, and dabbled in USA Track and Field, worked a couple of nationals. So got to go like Indianapolis. We went to Ohio State. We went to Oregon, just filming all these runners and athletes that you see for the US going to the Olympics. And so that, starstruck and stuff like that. I'm like, oh my gosh,
yeah.
Oh, I can't mess up this film, because they're going to come into the lab right after the race and watch all their film, right? And so it was high stress, even though all you're really doing is starting and stopping. But if you don't start it at the right time, and you need to stop it too early, you're in trouble. So I learned how to either start it early and let it run longer than it had to be. And sometimes they're like, you didn't have to film an extra 2 minutes after the race. I'm like, hey, I'm not going to be yelled at for not getting the finish of the race and stuff like that. But yeah.
A lot easier to edit than it is to find information we don't have. No, that's exactly a good point. Yeah, I don't care what it is. That pressure atmosphere is real, and that's real cool, man. I get to travel but also be a part of something as big as USA Track and Field. So it was in 2004 when I think, let me see, you were working with the Cal State Fullerton Athletic Department. That's also a very magical year at Cal State Fullerton.
Yes, it was.
They won the baseball national championship, the last one They've won since, but so were you working directly with that team at all?
I wasn't with the baseball team yet. I was just in the athletic department as game day staff.
Gotcha.
I didn't join the baseball team as like a member of their staff until the summer of 2006 when I came back from London.
Gotcha. And it was right before that, I think, where you were working with the Fullerton Flyers, right? So
Correct.
My experience was I started with the Flyers, kind of got word of mouth. Dr. Chris Alba spoke up for me and kind of got me involved with the Titan team. And so what was your experience? Flyers first, and then kind of more responsibilities with the baseball program?
Well, so I think it was the athletic department first. Then it was the Fullerton Flyers. So I started in the athletic department during the spring of my freshman year. And then I think the Flyers started the summer of 2005, if I'm correct. I mean, I was with them the inaugural year anyways.
Yeah.
But so I knew Horton and Hookie and Gilly all from just being in the athletic department, having to allow their families into the stadium, and all the other stuff, right? And so I always had great conversations with Hookie, and I was like, hey, I'm really thinking of potentially pursuing to become a sports agent, right? Can I, intern for the baseball team, do whatever you guys need me to do? And Hookie's like, yeah, come on in, as soon as we get back on campus from our summer recruiting stuff, let's meet, let's figure out, where you can help us and stuff like that. And so the fall summer of 2006, I started with them, and they put me with Gilly doing all the recruiting stuff. And so I'm like, you're trusting me with the recruiting, bringing in top tier talent, and I haven't done anything. And Cookie's like, you'll be fine. You just do whatever Gilly tells you to do. And so ultimately, I helped maintain our recruiting database, and I started actually doing a lot of the recruiting marketing materials that we were putting out to all the recruits. And it was almost like Gilly just signed his name on everything that we sent out. But in reality, I was building like the flyers, the, promos, whatever we needed to send out to the recruits. And then intaking all the letters that came in, organizing all the emails that came in, which kind of like piqued my interest a little bit more and more. And then after, just being around the guys, understanding what an agent actually does. And then Hookie was like, you're too nice to be an agent. I was like, you are too honest and trustworthy to be an agent. And he's like, I think you're right. Right. And so it's pretty much, I helped do like game day pitch tracking and just being an extra arm on the field during practices and stuff like that. And I finished under Serrano and his staff before I left Fullerton. And so, it was a great experience. I got to meet a lot of people, learned a lot, and I highly recommend it if you have that opportunity to, do it. But honestly, it's just asking the question, can I help you? And probably have to do for free, right? Because, free is always good for people like this.
Well, that's the lesson for that I want to share with people, is that it was the same with my experience. Like if you want something, you got to be willing to ask that, hey, how can I help you, but actually mean it and know that you're probably not going to be compensated or nearly for what the time you put in. I remember when Ed Hart came up to me, and I was just a college intern, and he came up to me and he said, hey, how's 30? I think it was $30 a game. Hey, how's $30 a game sound? And for me, I was like, you're going to let me watch baseball. You're going to feed me and give me $30, and I have to push some buttons. I was like, this is the greatest job I've ever had. And probably, one of my only first jobs. So you can't expect much to come back at you, but the knowledge and experiences you gain from giving of yourself, it all comes back to you so much more than it could have financially.
Definitely. And I worked in the athletic department while I was working with the baseball team, just to get that extra income, right? It was long days, but hey, that's sports. The more you're in sports, you understand hey, you're not a 9 to 5. You're probably a 7 a.m. to 2 a.m. That's your normal schedule. And if you don't love that type of work, working in sports probably isn't, for you.
No,
But I still love
it
it.
seems so much more glamorous than it
Yeah.
isn't, you know, and everyone's like,
Yeah.
oh, you should go be a broadcaster. Oh, you should go be a, you know, go work for a team or something. I'm like, I tried a lot of different ways. I could have tried harder, but hey, I landed where I landed. And some people, yeah, it's just like, they think you could, oh, just go be a CEO then. Just go be a, you
Yeah.
know,
Yep.
if it's so easy for me, you go do it, you know?
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
so with the baseball program and being at Cal State Fullerton Baseball it's a special place, and it was a great experience. You eventually moved on to the Kansas City Royals for a short time. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So I went to, so what was it? The fall of 2008, so the 2008-2009 season, the winter baseball meetings were being held in Las Vegas. So I went, you know, out to Las Vegas, you know, just to see what it was all about. And, you know, Serrano and all those guys are like, yeah, you know, it'd be a great opportunity, especially since you don't really want to go into like the coaching side. You can see all and meet all these ops people, you know, and just hang out. And so like they gave me a couple numbers to just reach out to people. So I did like the minor league baseball job fair, stuff like that. Ultimately, the Royals weren't hiring this position at the job fair. It was, I actually got a job with the World Baseball Classic that year for the fall of 2000, or the fall of 2008 nice. World Classic, and I worked the Dodger Stadium Championship, and I got a call. I think we were on the road. It might have been right before we went on that 11-day road trip to Southern Miss, and then Oklahoma State, and the midweek game was at Texas A&M. That someone that I had actually called just to get a filler for gave my name out to the Royals, going, hey, you know, if you need someone that, you know, for that position, you might want to give this guy a call, right? And so I get a call from who turned out to be my boss, going, hey, we're looking for videographers that will film our games the way we need it filmed, or the way the coaches want it filmed. And you're going to collect all the footages, angles, and create a report every game and send it to the GM after every game, right? It gets uploaded into the system, and we want to make sure you have that film categorized so that when they're looking at player roster moves, you know, they can just go into the system and pretty much identify it, right? Now it's state-of-the-art equipment, you know, it's completely different world from the apps and the programs that we had back then in 2009 to 2020. I mean, I've seen it, and it's like, oh my gosh, if I had that, it would have made my job so much easier. Yeah. And so, but luckily I was the first guy he called, and they hadn't hired any of their minor league affiliates yet. And he's like, all right, you're good enough. Your resume is good enough. You know, I like the conversation that we're having. You get to pick where you want to go and work. And I'm like, okay, can you tell me where all the minor league cities are, right? And the first one he goes is Omaha. I'm like, Omaha. I don't even hear this. I'm going to Omaha, right? Because I've been there before for the College World Series, you know, with the Titans. And I'm like, I know that city already. I'm comfortable in that city. Let's go, right? And he's like, I have to be honest, they don't have the best, you know, facility, because Rosenblatt was on its way, you know, out the door, and the locker rooms are small. The coaches' offices were small. He's like, and it's not set up for cameras, you know, that we're using. So you're pretty much doing everything handheld. And I'm like, doesn't matter. I'm going to Omaha. And so he's like, hey, we're going to need you to report. I think it was 2 days after Easter. Right. And I'm like, all right. And so I told Toronto and the staff, I'm like, hey, I'll stay with the team because I, you know, committed to the season to you guys. And like, Toronto's like, you can leave if you need to. He's like, this is a great opportunity, you know, do what you need to do. And he's like, I'm gonna support you 100% the entire way. But I was like, I've already booked my flights, right? Because I had to pay for myself to go on those road trips. I'm like, I already booked everything. And so I'll do the road trip, and then I'll do the ASU midweek series, and then I'll bounce after that, right? And so it went from that midweek game to loading up my car and driving out to Omaha, you know, that weekend, and starting Day one, which was kind of funny because I never got trained in what I was actually supposed to be filming. Or they just sent the camera, they sent the program, and they're like, have at it. And I call my boss, I'm like, hey, is there anything I'm actually supposed to be doing? Like, or am I just winging it? He's like, just talk to the coaches, figure out what angles they want, and then upload the film, right? And so I had the program, on my computer, and I think it's like 3 days before the first home game, and I have Fullerton footage, right? Just on my computer. I'm like, all right, let me play around with the Fullerton footage in this program, so I'm not going to make a crucial error on day one, right? Oh man, it took me like 48 hours of just playing around with the program to figure out what's the best way to upload it. How do I splice the clips? And and so I was like, if I had some training, it might have been a little easier, but it was a great experience. It's a great story to tell. But yeah, that's kind of how I got into the Royals. And then luckily in 2009, the Titans made the World Series again. And Serrano was like, hey, you're part of the team. And I did every single activity with the Titans while they're in Omaha. I rode on the bus. I had my own credential from the Omaha Royals, and that gave me all access anyways. So they didn't have to get me a credential. And I'm just doing everything, It was great. 2009 was great, even though we went 2-Q.
Haven't won a game in Omaha since 2006. It's drives. Oh, what a killer, man. Oh, yeah. Well, hopefully big things ahead. So, what did you say? You worked at Dodger Stadium for the World Baseball Classic. What were you doing? You were filming?
I was controlling the photographers and just making sure that their digital cards were getting back to their runners, and runners were running it back to their editors that were in the back room so that they can put out those, pictures and stuff like that. Yeah. And so I was manning the third base camera while I was inside the dugout.
That's awesome. So, before I forget, what you said, you did not study kinesiology at Fullerton. What did you study?
So I went in as a public relations philosophy major, right? Because my idea was I wanted to go to law school. Then kind of realized philosophy is a lot of reading. And I hated reading. So I actually was on track to graduate in 3 years. And I wanted to study abroad, right? And because of how many classes I had already taken, I couldn't study abroad with that major or with the PR major. So I'm like, what is the easiest one to do? I'm like, oh, poli-sci, right? Like, because I had AP credit from, AP government and stuff like that. And it was like, oh, I only have to take like 12 classes until I can get a poli-sci major, right? And every single class that I took while studying abroad in London was fit the poli-sci course. So then I would come back and only need one extra semester to finish out a double degree, right? And so I'm taking all these classes. I'm like, every single class I took while I was in London was a GE class that I had taken at Fullerton. And I'm like, this is the boringest year academically, but it was the best thing ever because all I did was Thursday, I hopped on a plane, went to some random city in Europe, came back Tuesday night, maybe went to class on Wednesday, and repeated the cycle all spring semester. And so I was just traveling all spring semester because I had taken all these classes already, and I could just come back. And like the way Europe does it is there's not like homework. Your entire grade is pretty much based off of a final essay or a final exam question. And you got the final exam question in your syllabus, and you got the prompt for the essay in your syllabus. So if I already knew the topics, I didn't have to be in class, right? And so I was like, it can't be, but after taking the fall semester, I didn't travel as much in the fall semester because I was like, oh, I'm gonna be a good student. I'm here to study. I was like, no, spring semester is going to be completely different. I double checked all the syllabuses and I'm like, we're good. We're gone,
That is crazy, man. I guess the moral of the story is, for so many of us, whether we're a kid or high school or even college and our adult years, we have this idea of the direction we want to go, maybe some interests, and we might pursue that a little bit but sometimes we get redirected somewhere we never thought we'd be, but it's always exactly where we were supposed to be, right?
Exactly.
So after baseball and everything, that was 09. You eventually, we already talked about it, but you found your way into the volleyball world, coaching high school and club teams,
Yep.
and you've been doing that ever since.
Exactly. Yep. I don't know how I'm still in it, but I love it. The girls might drive me nuts since I mainly work with girls, but hey, they keep me up to date on, social media trends, TikTok, Snapchat. So I don't feel like I'm out of the loop on anything, the lingo I get to stay up on. I'm like, what's that? They're like, you haven't heard that word? I was like, no. They're like, oh. And then I start using it. They're like, that's not how you use it. Like, well, that's how you explained it to me. But
isn't it funny, Trent? I mean, high school doesn't feel like that long ago, but it is a long time ago. I was class of 03. You were 03 also?
I was 03 as well. Yeah.
So we're the same age. And
yeah.
it's just like, wait a minute. I was 37 now. Gonna be, I mean, this is ridiculous. I've been 18 twice already. This is stupid.
Yep. Exactly.
Well, Trent, I wish you nothing but the best, man. You're still a big fan of sports, I gotta imagine. And it sounds like you're doing something you love doing. And hey, yeah, life is pretty good. All these great championships and things going on in Los Angeles too.
Yep.
Got to get Titan baseball back on track though, man. I don't know what it's going to take.
Definitely.
Yeah.
2 more years. I think they have two more years. Maybe next year is going to be another down year, but I think once Dietrich gets his recruits in, we'll see his style of play and coaching, and hopefully they just build upon, this season and stuff like that.
Well, someone who was involved in recruiting is so different now with this whole NIL thing and transferring.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It's a wild world out there. And I don't know how college coaches are gonna adapt, but they're gonna have to.
Yeah, I think honestly the rules are really relaxed and they're turning college recruiting. Honestly, I think it's a joke. Because it might make me sound old, but honestly, I grew up on the idea that, hey, if I'm committing, to a program, I'm committing to the program, right? I understand there's some situations where maybe it's just not the right fit, or you don't have the opportunity to play at that particular school. But now the transfer portal has just made it anyone that can get on, oh, I had a disagreement with the coach, or I had a disagreement with one of my teammates. I'm going on the transfer portal, right? And so now, just within 2-3 years since the transfer portal's been open, I think volleyball, you're seeing at least at the collegiate level, there's 1,600 athletes that were on the portal at one point this season.
Wow.
And it's just now with COVID and everything, it's oh, am I going to recruit the high school kids, or am I going to already take a seasoned college transfer and take them over, take over that spot? And honestly, you're seeing kids that are at the high school level lose out on potential college spots because a coach would rather take a seasoned player that they already know what they're going to get out of them.
Sure.
And
it's going around in all sports too. And it's going to be careful what you wish for sometimes, that's, I don't like this, but we'll see. It's got to be polished up. And so we'll see, but Trent, information or a place, maybe a website or something that people can find out more info about SG Elite tryouts or just the program itself.
Our website is sgelitevb.org.
vb.org. Okay.
Yep.
Check it out for any interested volleyball players or, family members or whatever that would be intrigued. It sounds like a great program and you're doing great work. Hey, Trent, it was great catching up with you, man. We met in a baseball press box years ago. And now here we are. You're coaching volleyball and I'm running a podcast. So
Love
you never
it.
know where you'll end up.
I appreciate you having me on. It was always great to catch up.
All right, man.
All right. Later.
Well, I've done a lot of podcasts now, and I definitely never thought I'd be talking volleyball, especially club volleyball, high school volleyball. But hey, I'm always a fan of, my alma mater, Rio Hondo Prep. They like to compete in volleyball. And so What a different type of show we had today. And it wasn't just the specific sport. It's, I think, the message and the lessons that sometimes you don't end up exactly where you thought you would, but you always end up exactly where you are supposed to be, something of that nature. But anyway, it was interesting hearing from Trent the different correlations in, travel baseball and AAU basketball and volleyball now, and everything seems year round and specialized. I don't necessarily love that, but it seems to be the way of the world, and we can't always control how the world operates, but we can make the best of our experience in it. So Trent Tcheng, man, that was great catching up. Back to our college days in Cal State Fullerton, and he worked more directly with the team than I did. I was up behind the scenes, like I said, in the press box, where we had a lot of fun, but still, we're all kind of connected in some way or another. And Trent Tcheng, I wish you the best of luck moving forward with SG Elite and Flintridge Sacred Heart Academy in your volleyball, softball, anything you're coaching, man. It sounds like you got a good hold of things and are being are very, very successful. So thanks again, Trent. I'll talk to you very, very soon. Guys, that will wrap up today's episode of the Get Home Safe podcast. Summer is here. Summer is upon us. I'm sure they'll be playing a lot of volleyball in those air-conditioned gyms there with SGV Elite and other programs around the country. But for the rest of us, it's beach time. It's barbecue time. It's just getting by the pool, getting out and about. Kids are out of school. Life is good. Maybe some summer vacations planned. Big things ahead. And for the Get Home Safe podcast, more great episodes ahead. Starting next week, Tuesdays, just me rambling away my opinions on sports and other topics going on around the world. And then Fridays, much like you heard today, a conversation with somebody, a long form interview talking about their area of expertise or just their life's travels, their journey. It's always fun for me to talk with someone and share that with you guys, the loyal fans of the Get Home Safe podcast. I will be back next week, as I said, Tuesday and Friday. Can't wait for more episodes. Can't wait for summer to get rolling here and to get us through summer and into the fall, as we will start another high school football season on the Charge to Keep podcast that is separate now from this one, but just big things ahead, and I can't wait. So guys, enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the beginning of summer. It's all that hope, all that time away from school for the kids. Special time. At least that's how it was my experience half a lifetime ago, which is so crazy to think about. But anyway, guys, enjoy the weekend. We'll see you next week. But guys, as always, no matter what you're doing, whether you're out on the town or around in third base, get home safe.